Hey, it's Lisa, and I'm excited to bring you another episode of Nashville on the Rocks. Today's guest has pretty much done it all in rock music. You've heard his music on radio and TV, and you've seen his face in music videos. From the early groundbreaking days of MTV to the now modern times of YouTube and social media, he's been there, writing, playing, recording, and touring alongside some of rock's most beloved bands and artists. Although he is perhaps most frequently recognized as keyboardist and rhythm guitarist for the band Winger, he's also played or written songs with other prominent names, such as Eric Martin of Mr. Big, Aldo Nova, Steve Perry of Journey, Alice Cooper, Tommy Shaw of Styx, the band Cinderella, and most recently, his songwriting can be heard on Mick Mars's 2024 solo release, The Other Side of Mars. So please enjoy the conversation with our friend, the multi-talented Paul Taylor. Hey, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We are super excited to have you in-house.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. I'm so happy that you made time. You took time out of your schedule to come down here. It's been something that Dan and I have talked about for a while, was having you on the podcast. And when we reached out and you said yes, we were like so excited about it.
Yeah,
so,
we appreciate you, man.
Yes, we really appreciate you. Thank you for stopping in today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to, before
From Lake Radnor to here in a few easy years.
Remember that?
That's true.
We knew it'd end up here, man. We always
yeah, you've been in Nashville for a while, and you and Dan have one of the last times you all saw each other was when you were on basically you were all hiking separately and ran into each other in Lake Radnor.
Bumped into him on the trail. Yeah.
God, maybe that was a lot longer than I expected.
We were jogging. We were doing. You probably still jog, Paul. I kind of fell off that wagon. I got.
Well, I don't really jog. I walk, run. I still get out there in the parks a lot, though. Yeah.
That's funny. As long as you're just making the best of what you can do.
Yeah.
I just want to tell people. I want to introduce you to our guests. I'm sure that most of our guests that are watching this, they know who you are. But you are a very accomplished musician and songwriter. You have played with most notably Winger, Alice Cooper, Cinderella, Steve Perry. You've done plenty of work in TV. You've written for a lot of people, most recently the Mick Mars album, the new one that came out, The Other Side of Mars, which is a really cool title. So I definitely want to cover all of that, but I want to start kind of chronologically. I want to talk to you about maybe your first, and then we kind of go from there and see where you ended up.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, fantastic. So you're originally from California. I don't want to date you, but I always say this, that you and Dan, people in the middle, you had the best experiences in music in that time. You had the first of the first. There was no cell phones, no internet, no this. You were right there in the moment, watching everything, taking it all in, watching kind of the first, some of the first rock and roll, moments happen, and you were all there for it. There was nothing for you to capture and then watch later. I love that.
I wish I could have. I don't have some footage of things that I wish I had. But
I get that. That's a whole other side. That's the downside of it. But just being in the moment of that, growing up, in California, what was that like for you? When you first started, getting into music, did you come from a musical family or?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
We had a piano in my parents' house, and I would just walk by it and kind of stand at it and kind of noodle around on the keys, and pretty soon I was started picking out little songs and melodies, and my parents were like, how are you playing that stuff? And I just had an ear for it, I guess,
Okay.
Which is good because I was definitely ADD as a kid, bouncing off the walls, so keeping me to my lessons and to practice an hour every day, that was very difficult for me,
Yeah.
So I did that for a short period of time, and then we had a couple move into our house for 6 months. They pulled up, and it was like the Beverly Hillbillies, vehicle pulling up in front of my house. And I was like, man, what is this? And my mom's like, oh, that's your cousin Kathy. Her and her guy Joe are going to be moving in with us for a while. Well, it turned out to be Country Joe from Country Joe and the Fish, that played Woodstock. And Joe played acoustic guitar. So I immediately just was fascinated with watching him play, all these acoustic songs. He wasn't doing the electronic thing yet.
Okay.
And so I said, man, I want to play guitar like Uncle Joe. And so they got me a Westbrook guitar, and he showed me my first chords, and the rest is history. But fortunately for me, I picked up piano again in high school and just started playing that, and that's what's gotten me most of my gigs, is the fact that I could play guitar and keys, and I'm a reasonably decent background singer. So
I love that. So why have a piano? I think that was just kind of a thing, because I feel like my grandma had a piano and no one
was
played
inherited.
it.
I think my mom inherited from her folks.
So it was just like, this is here. It looks great. If someone wants to try with it.
It was just a decoration in our house, yeah.
I love that. Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I grew up with a sister, yeah.
Okay. All right. So is your sister musical?
Not at all. Yeah.
No, okay, all right. I love this. There's something interesting about this.
So nobody was on the piano but you then?
That's
basically.
correct.
Right.
Yeah. My mom actually could play a little bit. I mean, I heard her play maybe 5 times in my life, and it was just stuff she remembered from when she was younger. She would play Green Sleeves or something like that,
I love that. I love finding out about people's backgrounds and like their music histories. You know what I mean?
I have a question about the whole piano thing, man. Since you kind of were introduced to the piano, when you look at songwriting, and maybe this is like a question for later, whatever, when we kind of dig in, do you look at music from a piano perspective, writing music, or is it a guitar thing, or just?
It's completely both. Yeah, and sometimes it's from a lyric thing, and then the piano or guitar comes in later. But I'd probably write 50-50 on guitar and piano.
That comes in handy, man, because, as a guitar player, I just know you look at the fretboard and sometimes it looks the same. You got to break out somehow.
Well, and the cool thing about a piano is you can be playing this chord, but you can alternate the bass underneath it, which makes it a whole different character. And obviously for piano, it's easier to write a ballad and things like that.
Right.
And then, of course, with synths, all the programming and sounds you have at your access. So I love it. It's
very cool.
I'm really, really glad that I continued on. I'm not an incredible keyboardist. That's one of my life goals. Each year, I'm like, in January, I'm like, man, this year I'm going to buckle down and become a really good piano player. Because I can play, but like if anyone right now said, hey, play us something, I wouldn't even know what to play, because all I ever use it for is to, do songs I'm working on or program stuff. And,
sure.
I don't have any piano pieces like I used to when I was younger. But
like, here's half a tune right here.
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
Exactly.
Right. So what was your first, concert that you remember seeing, or your first album that, or first rock album you got into?
The first big show I went to at, Winterland, which was the big place to go in San Francisco when I was young. And it's funny because later on, in my mind, Winterland was always this huge venue, and it was not too long ago, years later, that I was reading up about some of the history of it, and it was saying something like, 3,300 or 3,500 seats or something like that, and I'm like,
that's not
what?
It's not as big as you
I
thought
was thinking
it
it was like a 15,000 seat, because that's what it looked like to me as a kid. But my first show there was Bobby Womack, Focus, and Santana with my dad.
All right, cool.
Because I was a huge Santana fan when I was a kid.
Was that when Neil Schon was in the band with him?
No, it wasn't. And it was when Santana was going into his little spiritual time. So the first thing he did was walk out and ask for a minute of silence, which... You've got, 3,000 stoned San Francisco hippies, that didn't go over so well. But.
Yeah, that's a 50-50. I think that could be it could be depending on whatever mood they're in. But yeah, no, maybe not. Maybe you're right. Absolutely. That's too funny. So that was maybe the first concert you went to. That was memorable. Man, that's crazy. What was your first album that you had?
It was called 21 Solid Gold Rock.
Okay.
It was just a bunch of the popular bands at the time. A funny story. happened years later. One of the songs on it was called "Dirty Water." I don't know if you remember that song. I don't remember. I don't even know what the name of the band is. Is the guitar part's dun 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 dun, dun, you know? It's I love that dirty water, and so I always just thought that was the coolest song. And it was years later, I was with Steve Perry one time in the Valley, and I can't remember what we had done, gone hiking or recording, or I don't remember what, but we were hungry and we were going back, and he goes, man, he was a foodie like I am, and we spotted this Italian restaurant, so he's like, hey, let's stop in there. So we walked in the door, and the guy at the door, who was actually the owner, it was him and his mom owned the place, you know, I could see he recognized Steve, and he's like, wow, sorry. He goes, you're Steve Perry, right? And Steve's like, yeah. And so he seated us. He's like, man, I just want to say I'm a huge fan. He goes, I used to play in bands. And he goes, you know, before your guys' time, you wouldn't know. And Steve was like, oh, well, what'd you do? And he's like, well, I was in a band. We had this song called Dirty Water. And I'm like, whoa, what? And Steve, too. We were both
that
like,
is crazy.
I mean, dun, dun, dun. He goes, yeah, it's me on guitar. And both me and Steve. So then it flipped around. Me and Steve were like fanboying him, you know. And he was all flattered. It was awesome. You know?
Oh, that's kind of cool. It's like it's such a random thing to have happen.
So he went back. He had his mom make us these special pastry things.
Yeah,
and
he did.
It was a really fun day. Yeah.
Well, that's a cool
crazy.
story. And speaking of being a foodie, as an Italian from New York, I love Nashville food, but I miss a lot of things. Not that I can really eat it nowadays.
I have
but
not
do
found
miss
an
it.
amazing Italian restaurant here. I have not found any good Mexican restaurants. Chinese, I don't have a good Chinese place. So
See, we talk about that too. I'm like, I know I'm white, but I need something that has more flavor. Like, I need something that's got more. It's just got more. It's got to have something. Like the chicken doesn't taste like anything. I can make this at home.
we do have good barbecue here. I will say
Yeah,
that.
we do. We got good barbecue.
Yeah, what's that one place that we get? Was that like a neo-Asian?
TKO in East Nashville.
we
It's like an
dig that
Asian
place.
fusion place.
Oh, cool.
It's really actually.
Is it good?
It's delicious.
Oh, cool. I'll
yeah.
try it.
And they kind of got some takes on it too. And there's a really cool Japanese place in called Sonobana in Belmead, I think.
Cool.
Fantastic. They
Yeah,
also
we go
serve
to a
sushi,
place
too.
out in Brentwood called Suki. There's a whole bunch of I've run into Ryan and Rachel from Skid Row
Oh,
and
that's
Billy
funny.
Sheehan and Kevin Williamson, our old Atlantic rep from Winger. Yeah, so there's a bunch of us going to that place now.
Dude, see, it's just so nice to have like the little places that y'all go. Well, so taking it back, that's a really cool story about that. That's just kind of fun.
Yeah.
So in keeping up, like you started. Okay, so now you're playing music. Now you're doing your thing. You're playing in front of people. You're making it happen. So what was the next step? What was the thing that was like the jumping off point?
Well, me and my buddies had started this little band in my hometown called Stark Raving Mad, and we were playing. And very long story short, this is a quick one, but we had idolized a band called Crossfire in our town, and Gary Peel, who went on to play with Sammy Hagar and then Boston, was the guitar player, and we just idolized them. And one day our drummer said, hey, I just he was taking drum lessons from the drummer Jonesy, and had talked to Gary Peel once and told him about our little band in the garage. And Gary goes, oh, let me come and hear you guys. Because Jay had told him that we had learned one of their songs. It was called Grand Opening. It was this big musical piece. Mm-hmm. And Gary goes, oh, I want to hear you guys. So he came over, and we were actually pretty progressive for our age because we were really into Kansas and all these bands. And he's like,
Nice.
wow, you guys are actually really good. And he goes, tell you what, because we didn't have a singer that, we would all sing as good as we could, but it wasn't really. He goes, I'll have you guys come over to my house and we'll start recording up some songs. And once we get like 5 or 6, I'll shop it and see if I can get us a deal. And if we do, I'll be your singer. So we were like,
wow, that's cool.
Flipping out. And as luck would have it, two weeks into it, he called me one day and said, hey, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is I just got the audition and I'm the new guitar player for Sammy Hagar. The bad news is that means we can't do this project. But he goes, Sammy's looking for a keyboard player, and I told him about you. But he really wants somebody that basically could sing as strong as he can. And he goes, I told him that you can sing, but not like that. So he goes, why don't you and me start taking vocal lessons? And Sammy said to start working you in. So I started playing with the band for
dang.
a week, and then Sammy met this guy, Jesse Harms, who's a great keyboard player and sings his butt off. And so I ended up, that was the big disappointment of my life, But anyway, it was awesome for Gary.
It's like your first thing, and you're like, is this the last thing I'll do?
Yeah.
Is it the only thing I'll do or whatever? And
But it was great for Gary, and we loved Gary, and I was so happy he got that. And then, of course, it ended up with Sammy in Boston touring together, and Gary and Tom Schultz are like, they have that, they're always making gadgets and all that.
That's
So they hit it
funny.
off, and he ended up in Boston. But
wow.
but it's cool. I just actually did a record with Gary last year where I played keys on. I didn't write anything on it. They just asked me if I would play keys on it.
Sure.
It's called The Roads.
Okay.
It's the drummer from One Direction.
Oh.
And his dad is the singer of it, and
Okay.
Gary's on guitar, and the Boston's bass player is playing bass. And then it's me on most of the songs, and Styx keyboard player on 2 of the songs. So
Wow.
it's very 70s sounding stuff. It's a neat record.
I love it. It's a lot of good names on that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Oh my God. So how old were you when that happened with Sammy Hagar?
This is where I start getting, my timeline thing is all over the map. I can't remember, but I did that. And, that was shortly before, and then I started playing around the Bay Area with Eric Martin a lot.
Okay.
We ended up doing
he's
a
a
lot of
badass,
stuff
huh?
in L.A. And Eric is actually the guy who sang my first demo of Miles Away. And that's what Kip copied when we went to record it for the record. That's who he was copying, was Eric's performance on that. But
No kidding.
but anyway, I was just doing all this stuff around the Bay Area, and then I got a call that Aldo Nova had come to town and was looking to put a band together, and he had Billy Carmassi, who's Denny Carmassi, the drummer's little brother, great drummer, and David Sykes, who went on to play in Boston with Gary as well. But anyway, I went and auditioned and got that gig, and so I went from playing shows around the Bay Area for maybe 100 people to playing the Pasadena Rose Bowl, sold out for 75,000 people that year, opening for it was us with Triumph, Blue Oyster Cult, and Journey on 4th of July, sold out. Yeah,
That must have been so exciting.
That's a killer bill.
Well, I think it was. I think I blanked through most of it. I was so nervous, but it was awesome.
I get that. That's got to be in one thing.
The thing I remember the most is seeing Angie Dickinson backstage, because I'd never seen a TV star or a movie star. So
That's so funny. You're getting exposed to everything, like all the people, all the celebrities, like all the other bands. Man, that's kind of crazy. Wow.
Yeah, it was
What
fun.
year was this?
That was 1981.
1981. Okay, babe, what were you
So,
doing in 81?
I was listening to Aldo Nova's song, man.
Yeah,
It was-
Fantasy.
Dude, that song, I don't know, man. A guitar player, there's just something about the song and the keys, right?
He's back out and
I'm
playing
telling
this
you,
year.
man.
He's doing M3 this year, and I wish
Okay.
we were playing it because I'd love to say hi to him. It's been a long time, but we they said to us, hey, immediately after I got the gig, that completed the band because they already had the rest of the guys, and they said, hey, we're sending you guys to L.A. to do a video. And we were like, what's a video? Because MTV wasn't around till 82 or 8
Yeah.
or so. And so they said, hey, it's for Showtime. They show these little music clips between movies and stuff. And so we flew and did the video for Fantasy and for a ballad called Ball and Chain. So, and I'm actually, funny enough, as well as playing in Fantasy, I'm also an extra in it, where they have me walk through with some girl. There's a scene where you see somebody walk through.
Yeah.
That's me.
Hey, can I ask you about that video, man? What was I just didn't understand the helicopters and
I don't. Yeah.
Is there a story to that, or is it
I
just
don't know
a cool
what that was.
thing?
I don't know what that was all about. But the funny thing is that laser where he lasers the door down.
Yeah.
As cheesy as that looks, that was done at Lucas, films or whatever, and so that just shows you.
I don't think I've seen this.
how far things have
gotta
come
look it up.
since then. The
Yeah.
special effects. It's so hokey when you see it now.
But
Yeah.
man, but when that rip comes crashing in, man, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
In the video.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 81 at this point, and then the early years of MTV, man. So what was the next step for you? Because Alice Cooper wasn't until a couple years later,
Well,
right?
so I completed that year with Aldo, and then went off to do a new record, and it was at that point me and Jeff Pilson kind of toyed with putting a project together, and we got together one day to write, and the next day he called and said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity in LA, but I think I have an opportunity for you as well." I think he was going to do something, I think it was with Lita Ford or something, and he goes, "But also I found out Nick Gilder needs a keyboard player." So we went down and we both got the gigs. So I was playing with Nick. Well, we were only working on songs and recording, and then we threw this little cover band together just for fun, so that we could make a little bit of money on the side. And it's funny, I could blackmail Jeff with some of the. I have tapes of him singing like Little Red Corvette in 1999, and he's really good at emulating people. He sounded amazing on it. But yeah, so we did that for a while. It was a little band called Cannon, and it was really fun.
So that was right before the whole docking for him happened.
Yeah, well, it ended up happening while we were playing. We were playing a little club called Shot of Gold. It had this gold tinsel behind the stage, and the docking guys all came in and watched him that night, and he got the gig. And so that's what kind of disbanded our little cover thing. And by then, I was starting to do some auditions. I had auditioned for a band called David and David. They had a song called Welcome to the Boomtown. And they had called me and said, "Look, just so you know."
We know that song. Not to distract you, man, but we were just doing it. Tom Hurst Presents Loud Jams over at the Wilbur Theater last Monday.
The song.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard it since then.
It's a great song, man. It's kind of got that dark verse.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool, moody.
They had called me and said, "Man, so far you're the guy, and we really like what you do." And I was like, "Oh, good," And then that night, I literally got a call from this girl out of New York, and I had produced a demo tape for the band Vane, one of their first demos, and
love Vane.
She saw my name on there and was like, "Hey, are you the guy that played with Aldo Nova?" And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh my God, we need a guitar player, a keyboard player that can sing backups for Alice Cooper. Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so she said, "Well, we'll send you 5 songs if you could learn those and be down here." And so I'm like, "I'm down here. I'm in LA." So they got it to me, and I learned the songs, and I've told this story before on other podcasts, whatnot, but it's funny because Alice just walked up, and I had gotten there early, and Alice walked up and said, "Hey, are you the guy auditioning for keyboards?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Does your name start with K?" And I go, "No." And he's like, "You got the gig." And I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I already have a Kip, a Ken, and a Kane. I don't want any more Ks." But then we went in, and he goes, "Do you know 18?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because it's basically 3 chords, like da 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 C.
Right.
So we played through the first chorus, and he stopped. And he's like, "You got the gig." He goes, "It's not rocket science." So I was like, "Okay, that was the easiest audition I ever got." But
I feel like that sounds exactly like how he would talk, just very like chill and.
Oh, he's awesome. Alice is the absolute best. I played on and off with him for 13 years.
Wow.
Until I kind of finally passed the torch on. I was getting, doing too many different things, and I had done so many tours with him. And but yeah, total professional, total great guy, very funny, very witty. I actually just saw him for the first time this past year in September. First time ever. I saw him at Bridgestone with Rob Zombie and Ministry and Filter. And it was great. It was fantastic. Everything that I had expected, that I was hoping for, it was awesome. We had great seats. It's amazing. He's just still going. He's like the ever-ready bunny. I just,
I love to see that, though. I love to see people that are still happy and they're still making music with it and they're still bringing all of their art. And he's been, around since 1970?
I remember me and Eric Martin were at some sound studios where there was a rehearsal hall. It was right in Hollywood, somewhere over by SIR, and all of a sudden we see this big white Rolls Royce pull into the gates, and they had multiple rehearsal and soundstage and film things there, and the door opens and Alice got it. We're like, "Oh my God, there's Alice Cooper," and he was kind of, we were young, he was kind of spooky to us at the time, but little did I know what a good guy he was. Really
it's all just a facade. were you just like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I want it to be? Or were you just kind of so zoned in to like the music and who you're playing with that it was just like an everyday thing for you?
No, I think just anyone that's been in the music business knows the struggle is just, it's constant. And anytime you have anything good go for you, you kind of think, oh, this is probably it. This is probably it. Like every step of the way, I thought it was just going to be this momentary cool thing. And then I was going to have to figure out where I was going to try to find a job. I mean, I wish I had known all along that I was going to keep falling into, there was one period of time that ended up being rough, and that was the 90s. Like, our whole genre couldn't get arrested. And, that's when I had to kind of really, refigure out what I was going to do. And that's when I started flipping into, the writing for TV, which I clumsily started that because it meant I had to learn how to record, which meant by that point that I was going to have to start figuring out computers, which that was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. That's why I was a musician. So that was a rough transition, like becoming a technical guy and learning how to run all that. And back then, nothing talked to anything. Like, you'd get the Mac and you'd get Pro Tools software, but Pro Tools wouldn't work with this and this wouldn't work with that. And every company blamed the other one. And all I did was spend hours on the phone with tech support all the time. And but over like 3 years, I finally got 4 songs that were sounding relatively good, and that's when I ran into Mark Ferrari, and he mentioned that he was writing for TV, and I just kind of was like, wow, I jumped in with him, and we just started writing more and more and more, and everything started placing, and that sent me off in a whole new direction of just writing for TV.
Well, it sounds like you were ahead of your time with all of that. You know what I mean? That's what everybody does now.
Now everybody in Nashville over the last basically, I don't know, about
decade.
8 years. Yeah, they're all, that's what everybody's trying to do now, but I'm 350 songs ahead of them.
Yep, exactly. So now we reach to the point where you're playing with Alice Cooper, and then you got to know Kip Winger, and then Kip's in the band with Alice Cooper.
Right.
You're in the band with Alice Cooper. And I know you've talked about this before, but like, getting to know him, like, was it kind of an instantaneous connection, or were you? It
was pretty fast. Yeah. It was, the first couple days I heard him playing a boombox before Alice got to rehearsal, and it was these songs, and I was like, man, what is that? And he's like, oh, some stuff I wrote last year. And he had like 50 songs he had written and recorded the year before. And I was like, who's singing? And he's like, me. And I'm like, that's your voice? I'm like, and he was a good looking guy, and I was like, dude.
Nice smile. Very nice smile.
Yeah. They called him Kip Colgate. But yeah, we started writing like instantly on the road. Our first song that we wrote together was State of Emergency, which is on our first record. And we had a little Ensoniq keyboard, and we would just program stuff in rooms every day. And by the end of the first year, we compiled some songs. And then me and Kip and Ken, the drummer, flew to Boulder, Colorado. Kip's brother had a studio there, and we did a 5-song demo of 5 distinctly different sounding songs. One was almost Duran Duran. One was, because the whole 80s thing, was like just really starting to kick into gear, and we didn't know which way we should go, but everybody picked the couple rock songs that we had done on it. They're like, look at how good Rat's doing and all those bands. You guys can nail this stuff. And
sure.
So, yeah, we did a new demo that included 17 and Madeleine and, God, I don't remember which other ones were on it, but I think Headed for Heartbreak was on that, and they were recorded very well and pretty much sounded like the record, and that's when Doug Morris finally at Atlantic Records was like, all right, I'll sign this. So.
Hey, what was, not to cut in, Lisa, what was that, was it the first single, Madeleine? Was that the first one?
Yeah.
I just remember that being on the radio when me and my
that
brother
was the first
were driving.
single.
Dude, I love that song, man. And it kind
of
of
video,
modulates.
The fingers that they're shooting through the hole of guitar and the fingers, that's me.
No kidding, man. But that song, like, I just remember the song was just, it just seemed really dynamic compared to what was kind of going on during the time. I just felt like I didn't understand it at the time because I was just a kid, though. But there's like modulations and everything just kept lifting, and a lot of very eventful song.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I was.
Yeah, you didn't have the language
saying?
for it at the time. You just knew what you appreciated it. You just knew what you liked about it.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I always say that I'm like, there's a little bit, not to put him on the spot, but there's a little bit of an age gap between me and Dan, but not much. And
She's a lot older, man.
Yeah, I'm tons older. But like I always say, I'm like, man, I grew up in the wrong decade. Like I would have been like, I love the 80s. I love 80s music. You know,
was fun time. Very fun.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, even though I like grew up in the 90s, that was something I had to kind of learn kind of like after the fact. I didn't grow up with cool music. I had to learn. It was hard. It was slim pickings out there. My mom listened to Air Supply. You know what I mean? It was.
Not that they're bad. I mean, you know, it's just.
Hey, I got asked to do 2 shows with Air Supply.
Did you really?
But what happened was I was like, whoa, okay. And as a second keyboardist, which would be playing string parts and all that, so it would be fairly easy. But it was around the holidays. It was right around the holidays. And I said, okay, where are the 2 shows? And they're like, Vancouver and Vietnam. I'm like, what?
Just a hop, skip, and a jump.
I'm like,
V and the V.
First of all, learning an entire set of stuff just to play 2 shows and then also have to fly around the world. I was like, nah.
Yeah.
That's too funny. Oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of wild. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, they're probably.
They had some huge hits, though.
They did.
They're
They're probably living off of everything they had. Well, it was that. My mom was really into that, and my dad was. There's nothing for my dad past 1950s rock and roll, which is kind of cool for me because I think I know every song that came out in that decade. I think I know all the lyrics to all of them. And then Neil Diamond. You know what I mean? That's it.
There you go.
That's all my dad cared about was Neil Diamond and 1950s rock and roll.
That's funny.
But so yeah, like going into the 90s, like I can see that was a pretty significant change for just music in general. So like,
yeah, it literally wiped us off the map, you know, which that's what happens, you know, it's like how 50s left and disco left and so did the 80s. But, you know, with the 80s, we've lucked out with this weird resurgence of festivals and cruises. And that's kept us really busy for the last, 10 years now.
Well, and I think that there's, I can't speak too much about this, but I think that like, I mean, I don't know if this is just my opinion, so I don't want to act like it's fact. But I feel like, in the mid 2000s, once you started moving further away and like, like some progressive bands started coming back out again and some more like, emo or emotional music started happening. Like, I think there was like kind of a kickback to like the 80s stuff, like stylistic, like guitars, like just a lot of things that I feel like were just kind of making a resurgence for like people that had just kind of really loved that. And like someone like me, was kind of drawn to that too. So I think it definitely kind of made, it was a far enough gap from like what was going on in the early 90s. So like I just feel like I noticed that more.
Well, they were such different animals. I mean, the 80s was happy. The 90s were depressing.
They were depressing.
And I think after a decade of just bummer songs, everybody was like, oh my God, I need to hear just something even remotely happy again,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, 100%.
But there's room for everything. And, at this point, I mean, like I told you earlier, we're doing shows this year, Winger with Five Finger Death Punch and Judas Priest at the Sweden Rock Fest. We're playing a show in Oregon with Stone Temple Pilots. So
I love that.
Now everybody's just kind of like going, wow, it's cool when we get to see a little of everything,
Yeah.
So there's room for all of us.
It's more like a buffet of music now. You know what I'm saying? You kind of get a little bit of that.
Yeah.
You like this, you like that.
We're going to move into this next segment, which, but before we do that, I just kind of want to ask you, there's something I've kind of wondered is that when you get to play with all these musicians and you get to play and you get to write and, you've got a hand in everything. Like when you met with Kip, you said it was kind of instantaneous. Are there just some people that you've kind of clicked with a little bit more in terms of writing or playing with? Because you seem like you have a really long-standing career of the musicians that you've played with. So, like, is it pretty consistent for you? Or are there some people that you just kind of, like, you can read each other a little bit better? You know what I mean? Like, in terms of writing or playing.
Yeah, I mean, it's always different, and sometimes it's, you just hit it off on a touring level and just go out and tour and then you go your own way, which Winger, we're a little of everything, sometimes, well, we love hanging out. Like when we haven't seen each other, the first thing we do, we all fly into whatever city we're first playing, and we all go out to dinner together and all that. And so we do like getting together, but I think that's part of how we've stayed together for 36 years is once we're off, we keep in touch on the phone and stuff, but we don't hang all the time, It's we give each other some space when we're not working together, because when we are,
it's like a
we're
relationship.
Right in each other's space all the time. So, and the fact that we have all 5 original guys at 36 years and we're still buds, is really amazing.
That is really amazing. That does not happen.
But yeah, then there's
often.
some guys that you just don't really hit a writing thing. You just go tour, or I get hired on just to play for them. Like I did a tour with John Waite, like about 6 or 7 shows, and Tommy Shaw. I went out with for a month opening for Leonard Skinner and Peter Frampton, and with those, and with Tommy, I would have actually loved to sit down and write a song with him, but it was just so quick, and
Just
we were
of
too
dates.
busy playing Nerf football. But he's a good guy, and it's funny because now he lives down the street from me here in Nashville,
Oh, that's
and
funny.
I've seen him twice in other cities, and I never run into him here. So, but I'd love to write a song with Tommy sometime. But
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I feel like Nashville's like that too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just never know who's kind of like around the corner in
Yeah.
that sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. You're like, we live down the street from each other, but we see each other outside of Nashville.
yeah, it's
weird.
crazy. Well, and the other thing is, I mean, the fact that he lives here, he's on the road more than anybody I know. So,
Yeah.
the fact he lives here doesn't mean much because he's never home. So,
No, I get that. There's a lot of it. There's still a lot of, thank God, like, past couple of years have picked up really since COVID, because I feel like everybody was home for a little bit, like
yeah.
chilling and kind
that
of
was
wondering.
a scary time, obviously
Yeah.
for musicians, because it was like,
Yep.
oh boy, is this it for our career?
Well, just like you kind of like what you brought up, like when everything is kind of either, happens in a cycle, or like something ends and it moves on to the next thing. You don't know what that's going to look like, especially when people are doing things from home and, like virtual videos. Like, is that going
Right.
to be a thing? Like, what the hell is going to happen
Yeah.
with that, But you just can't replace live music.
Yeah.
You just can't,
Yeah, it's
You
true.
know, going back to the Monsters of Rock thing, that was a really unique way to keep this whole ball bouncing, don't you think? And I was wondering if you knew who was the first person to come up with this idea. Was it
I don't know
Larry?
where they
Moran?
started? I really don't know. I mean, the first ones we did was me and Ryan and Jeremy, when we were just doing that big rock show thing for fun, which was the predecessor to
Right.
the residency that they ended up continuing on with. But Doc McGee came down and saw us at 12th and Porter and said, man, you guys would be great on the Kiss cruise. And we're like, Doc, we're just doing this for fun. We're playing cover songs. We shouldn't be playing with. And he said, no, trust me. You guys haven't been on the boat. They will love you. And
awesome.
long story short, we did one. That was probably, 12 years ago now. And at the end, Sixth Man people came up and said, oh, my God, everyone on the boat loves you guys. We want you back for next year's Kiss, and we want you for Kid Rock. And so we started doing the Kiss and Kid Rock a lot. And then
Yeah.
and then later on, I did Monsters of Rock. I don't know if that was happening at the same time, but I just didn't know about it. But I
Yeah.
think this is Monsters of Rock's 12th year. So I really don't know what the first one was. But now there's so many different ones. I've been on the Def Leppard one. I've been on the Out on the Blue, which is basically the Moody Blues cruise. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The one I just did last couple weeks was my 23rd cruise. So
That's crazy. I did
Yeah.
that Monsters of Rock thing with Karabi back in, I think it was 2012,
Yeah.
2003. I did a couple of them, man, but it was a blast,
They're
man.
fun.
Everybody's got a drink in their hand the whole time.
yeah,
Everybody always looks like they have a good time, and I know people that have gone. I knew people even before I moved to Nashville that would go on
Yeah.
those, So it has been around for a while. It's been super popular, and it's nice to see that still happening.
Oh, that's
like
great.
people love
Yeah.
cruises and they love good music.
yeah.
Good
So-
combo.
Let's, you know what we're going to do? We're
Okay.
going to move on to our next segment, which I discussed with you a little bit earlier. So you like to drink bourbon, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is on this show, one of the segments is I like to teach my guests how to make a cocktail. So I just want to know, would it be cool if I taught you how to make a cocktail?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Oh my God. It's going to be so much fun. So we're going to be working with a bourbon called Uncle Nearest 1856 today. And I'm going to teach you a fun and easy cocktail. And maybe when you're home or if you get a little like bored, you're like, you know what? I'm just tired of drinking this. Maybe you'll try this and we'll see how it goes.
I look forward.
Cool. Awesome. We'll do the setup. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Sweet.
Hey everybody, Tony Harnell here from TNT. You are listening to or watching Nashville on the Rocks.
Awesome. We are back and we are going to make a really fun bourbon cocktail. Okay.
I'm in.
Awesome. So this is going to be a Gold Rush cocktail. We're going to be using the Uncle Nearest 1856. This is a 100 proof bourbon. We sampled a little bit at the start of the show.
Yeah.
So what'd you think?
I thought it was very good. Just a little bit of a bite, but it was very good.
Right, but not overpowering, not to the point where you're
it
like,
was very good.
This is too much, and for 100 proof, it's pretty good. We're going to be using fresh squeezed lemon juice with the sticker of the lemon that I still have on it, and then honey simple. So that's pretty much just like
And what's in that you?
So it's 1 part water and 1 part honey.
Okay.
And the reason is because when you put like just straight honey in drinks, and especially if you're mixing it with ice, it gets cold and it doesn't
clumps
dilute
up.
and it clumps.
Okay.
So this is just to make it a little bit easier to work with. Okay. So, all right, Paul, this is going to be fun. We're
Putting
going
me
to
to
start.
work.
Yes, we made it work.
All
So
right.
I just washed my hands. They're clean.
Okay.
So I'm going to fill up my tin and then I'm going to fill up yours.
Okay.
Okay. And then we have 3 glasses in front of us. So you're going to make your cocktail and I'm going to make Dan's cocktail.
Okay.
So I will give you the fun little
Thanks, babe.
Martin glass
Okay.
because I feel like that'll be good. And then we'll top you off with a few ice cubes.
Right.
We'll put some right here. Okay. So this is such an easy cocktail. It's honestly one of my favorites to do. Citrus goes really well with bourbon in general, lemon juice, just to cut everything up a little bit of sweetness. So, okay. So,
See, if I didn't actually know you're actually a bartender, I'm not sure I would be trusting you right now.
you wouldn't maybe believe me, you know? Now I understand that. Okay. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the jigger, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pour up to this first little line right here,
I'm
which is
supposed
on
to be
the
able
inside.
to see that. I can't see that.
You do the best that you can, right? And then,
I can see how far about, so I'll just do it by.
right, just a little, and that's 1.5 ounces, okay? We're going to pour that right into this big tin right here.
much.
That's fine.
Okay.
You do whatever you want. Pour into that tin.
That's going to be a strong one, probably.
It's going to be good. Oh, shoot, I forgot I'm making Dan's, too. I talked about this, and I just left him out.
Always
Okay.
forgetting about me, babe.
I'm sorry, babe. You're on the controls, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be drinking anyways. Okay, so then what we're going to do next is we're going to take the lemon juice, and it's fresh squeezed lemons, and yeah, you know, it's not that hard. It sounds a lot, you know, it sounds a lot more bougie than what it is. So I'm going to do 3/4 of lemon, which is, again,
Right.
up until that small little
But that's in
line.
the small one.
That's in the small one. There you go.
The other one was in the large side, right?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
Good.
And again, I forgot Dan's lemon juice. I'm going to pour it.
And
Don't
this
worry
goes in
about me,
here.
It
babe.
goes in the big tin.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. You're doing fantastic.
All right.
Dan's like, don't worry about me. I'm like, no, I kind of have to. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a good
Nobody
cocktail.
cares about me, babe.
Okay. Now we're going to take the small side again. And so, see, I have this a little easy to pour. So I'm going to do one. We're going to fill this up to the very top. And that's 1 ounce of honey simple.
Okay.
Okay. I have so much faith in you right now. I know you can do this. And then we talked about this before. Like if you've ever played maracas or I guess.
Try not to bang the table too much,
I'm
babe.
sorry, you
That's
know.
going right through the microphone.
For all you boys and girls at home following this,
Yes, exactly. All right. And then we're going to take this small part right here and we're going to put it in there. Okay. This is the fun part. This is where we get to just go like buck wild. Okay. So we're going to shake this for about like 10 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
Ready? Go.
That's
I
awesome.
love when everybody makes the cocktail. See how the tin's getting cold,
you should be recording this.
Dude,
right?
I'm telling you, it's fun to watch.
Okay. I think that's probably pretty good. So at this point, it's going to be tight. Yeah, you're going to have to bang it.
I always see them doing this, and I always wonder why with all the technology we have, no one has a better way to do it.
This is the best way to do it, apparently.
Right.
Okay, so you're going to take your strainer, put it on top, and you just literally pour right into the glass. All right, it's looking pretty good. I know that's a massive glass. If you want more ice, you can totally take what's in there
that's fine.
and put it in there. Okay, perfect.
Hey, babe, can I have the bigger one?
Yeah, sure, why not? Here you go.
I just saw there was one that was a little bit taller than the other.
Yeah, you're going to take the Angel's Envy glass, so here you go.
All right, do
Awesome.
cheers first. Here.
Yes. Cheers. Thank you so much for
thanks
coming
for
on the
having me.
podcast. Cheers. All right, guys. Bottoms up.
That's great.
Right?
Love that.
It's fresh.
That is really good. Refreshing.
So,
I have a feeling the rest of the interview is going to be very interesting.
well, and I love fresh lemon juice just because like I'll buy it if I'm in a pinch, but it's just cut it up, get a little strainer, you make it, and it just tastes so much better. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't be a bartender.
You did a good job, man. It tastes really good.
fucking
Man.
lemon
See, now
juice.
I've been paid for the interview.
Right? There you go.
We
See?
pay people with mixed drinks.
Bribing. It's called bribing people. We left off talking about, like, so now you're with Winger and you're moving in a direction where you're coming out of the 80s. You're a couple albums into Winger. Is that where the next step where you kind of like backed away and started writing music?
Yeah, so me and Kip had been together for 2 solid years, and in the Alice days, we were out on the road like almost the entire year in a bus together, and then went straight into getting signed. I flew off. He had quit and went off to get us signed. I stayed with Alice, and I literally ended a European tour with Alice, flew to New York where, actually it was Hoboken, New Jersey, where I moved in with Kip and Reb into a condo. Mm-hmm. We finished the first record, and so we had been together for, like through Alice, right into Winger, and which was 4 years on the road, 2 records, and I just started burning out, and I was like, and me and Kip were just kind of sick of staring at each other. So we talked, and I said, man, I'm going to go write. And so, and as it turns out, they ended up disbanding, like, I think it was about 6 months later, because, we were...
Maybe everybody was just kind of tired.
It was 92, and, little did we all know that we were all about to be out of work. So, but at that time, I got introduced to Steve Perry, and I just was like, man, I would love to write a song. And he came over to my house, and I played him a couple ideas, and he really liked one of them. And we sat there kind of playing it all day, and he was singing different things. And long story short, over a series of months, he finally called me one day and said, hey, can you come and just jam? Don't learn Journey songs. I just want to jam with some guys. And so I went down there, and
were you still in LA at the time?
I was living in LA.
Okay.
Matter of fact, from the first time when he came over to that house, I was renting because I had been on the road for so much. And after our first meeting, I had ended up buying a house there, and so I moved in the interim. And then, so he called and said, hey, can you be at this rehearsal place at 9 a.m. and don't think you know what I want to do. Don't learn any songs. Just show up with your equipment. So I did, and
it's kind of ominous.
Got there, and there was this little kid standing out in front with who I thought was his girlfriend, but it was his mom, and that was Lincoln Brewster. He's now a very big Christian artist, but
oh wow!
Also, he at the time was 19, and we started talking. He's like, "Oh my God, are you in Winger?" And I said, "Yeah." And I go, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm Lincoln. I'm here for the Steve Perry thing." And I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Guitar." And I'm like.
You just didn't know what
I didn't know who I was going to be playing with. So then it was him, and then Phil Bino, I think that's how you say his last name, plays bass with Steve Vai, shows up. He had flown in from Boston, and then Terry Bozzio from Missing Persons, the drummer,
nice.
shows up.
Very cool.
And everybody's like, do you know what we're doing? And everyone's like, no. And so
keeping everybody on their toes.
We got into Room G at Third Encore in L.A. It's their biggest room with a giant PA. Took Terry about 4 hours to set his gigantic drum set up, and Steve was like, Terry, we're just jamming. And he's like, I'll never forget, he looks at Steve and goes, you want me to do what I do? Let me sit up my kit. And I was like, whoa, he's got so, and you know, sure enough, he's an incredible drummer.
Oh yeah, he's
so we got all set up, and
he's like, do you want the full package or
yeah,
what?
That's
you know,
the thing. So we all set up, and then Steve gets up on stage and goes, okay, go. And we're all like just deer in the headlights. I was like,
talk about being
and
on
then
the spot.
Because then I was like, oh my God, I was supposed to learn something, you know. And no, he says, play something, anything. And we're all just, you know, strangers looking at each other. And that moment, I just went, I am not going down with the ship. I'm like, I go, Terry, just pound out a beat, anything. And I'm just going to start jamming chords. And Lincoln, you can just, you know. And so that's what we did. We just started completely jamming. And Steve was just singing any nonsense words. And he goes, hey, I just want to see if I still got it in the pipes. And because, you know, he'd been out of Journey for 8 years. And
yeah.
We had a blast playing. And the next day, Steve called me back down, and it was me and the kid again, and a different bass player and a different drummer. And that started to be the thing. We just jammed for 6 months. And in that 6 months, me and Steve and Lincoln just started writing all these kind of, that we numbered the ideas. It was like, hey, yeah, let's play number 4 again. You know, we had these kind of set ideas that we're starting to formulate.
Yeah.
And then I started getting calls to go on the road with different people. And so I told Steve, I go, hey, you know, I'm not sure whether we're just jamming and having fun or if you have something in mind, but, you know, I just bought a house. I need to be working. And he's like, well, actually, you know, I'm thinking let's do a record because I really like the ideas you, me, and Lincoln are coming up with. So
that's awesome.
I'm like, I'm in. I'll turn everybody down then. And that's what we did. We spent 3 years and wrote a record, and then we hit the road for 2 months, of which there's only one live show that made it out because Steve always had people getting people with video cameras. He didn't want that out there in the day. That was not cool. But it's Steve Perry live.
Because they would turn around and sell it or something, right? Yeah.
It's at the Beacon Theater, and there's footage of a lot of the show and a lot of the different songs. And I had these 2 giant big red PV keyboards, but it was an awesome band. It was me, Todd Jensen on bass, who's currently the bass player of Journey. Moise Lucas Jr., who's the most badass drummer I ever heard in my life. He played with Diana Ross and Jeffrey Osborne, Kenny Loggins. He was the drummer on the George Michael's Faith tour.
Wow.
We auditioned every best drummer out there, Jonathan Moffat, Dave Weckl, you know, Terry Bozo, everybody. And Moise came in right at the very end and just floored us. The power and just amazing. So it was a killer band, and Steve put us all into vocal lessons independently each week and then as a band. And I was blown away with how this vocal teacher, he got, like, after about a month, our vocals just started lasering out because he would get us to pronounce the words the same and all that. And he did incredible things. I mean, my friends, I had one friend show up at my show in L.A., and he's like, man, you can't even tell which things are samples and which aren't. I'm like, we're not running any samples. That's the band singing. You
That's
know?
cool.
Can I ask you, Paul? Was it Don Lawrence at all?
The vocal teacher?
There's a. I know because you said New York and Beacon.
His name was Joel, and I don't remember his last name, but he really worked huge wonders with us. I was shocked how much he improved the band.
No kidding. Okay, I was just curious because I know a lot of guys who went to that Don Lawrence guy.
Okay.
He's based out of New York, and you said the Beacon, so I thought maybe.
Yeah, no, we did all this in Los Angeles.
So
okay.
obviously that is a huge, like, yeah, let's write a record for Steve Perry. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it got kind of strung along so much. I was really unaware of where it was heading. And then by the time he said, yeah, let's write a record, I mean, because all I was just dreaming of is that I might be able to finish one song with the guy. And pretty soon I was just jamming with him, which was really fun, but he didn't want anyone to know. So we were very quiet about it.
Keep it quiet.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, wow, this is really exciting, but it's really kind of not because I can't say anything, and I didn't really know how to take it. And by the time he finally said, yeah, you know, we were far along, and it was just kind of going, and it was really, I mean, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but it all happened kind of in a way so fast, and then all of a sudden we were out on the road, and I just remember one day I was playing, and I just looked over, and it was like, holy shit, I'm on stage with Steve Perry. Like, it was a moment, way late in the game where I just, because I'm a Bay Area guy. I grew up, watching Journey at my dad's college before Steve was in the band. Then I saw even Journey play A Day on the Green with a singer that probably no one even knows they ever had, which was Robert Fleischman.
Okay.
He was only in for a very short period of time. But, yeah, it just... But we had a blast. The tour was so much fun. Steve's a good guy and a big foodie like me. I mean, we used to eat every day at this place called Chin Chin's on Ventura Boulevard. And it was a lot of fun.
Hey, Chin Chin's, if you're still around, shout out.
Oh, they're around.
No, that sounds so cool. So, like, I think the thing that is important that I want to point out is as much of a musician and a player you're a songwriter too. And like that seems to be something that like you've always come back to, and that's a big thing because we've talked about that a little bit on the show with some previous players. Is a lot of people struggle with that, but it seems to be so effortlessly with you. Like you just talk about writing songs and getting with people and writing songs, and I think that's really really awesome.
It's funny that we're talking about that because I did realize something. I was telling you this morning, I was just going through a lot of the songs I'd written for TV, which I have not got to hear them in a long time because their file format was different. And I just today figured out how to convert them. And I was listening to songs I haven't heard in a long time. And I was like, I realized, wow, I'm a really good songwriter when I have an incredible singer to write with, because then I know where I'm going. Like when I don't know who it's for, I just sit there and I'm kind of just floundering in the dark, and I finish an idea and I go, well, this would be great if I had so and so to sing it, but it never goes in. It goes in my file of just I don't know what to do with this thing. But like a couple of the women that I've wrote a bunch of pop stuff with, they're great singers, and it made writing a song so much easier because any little melody or words that we came up with, they could just instantly sing it, and we knew, yeah, that's working, or no, it's not working.
It's like a ping pong.
As opposed to when I'd finish a song and then go, okay, I need to go look for a singer to sing it, which I had to do a lot for TV stuff. Sure. I would go down to Broadway sometimes and just wander around looking for people and I found a couple, like this one guy with a real high tenor voice. I was like, hey, do you think you could cop like a in sync kind of thing? And I just was listening to a couple of those, and this one guy, he came in and he goes, I've never done that style before, but he had this real high tenor voice. He killed it. He sounded just like Justin Timberlake. So
like I know you played with Cinderella for a little bit, so now at the time, like you're writing with Steve Perry, you're writing for yourself obviously, and then or just in general, you're just always writing. So Cinderella, that happened, what, in 2010, 2012?
It was 2012.
Okay.
Tom called me and said, hey, we have a 2-month tour, and we went out on that tour.
Did you all play together before? On a tour before Cinderella?
All the time.
Okay, so you all knew each other.
Somehow us and Cinderella seemed to always end up on bills together, which was fantastic. We loved those guys, and the band is phenomenal. So... he said, I'm going to need a keyboard player, and we have a 2-month run with Poison. And so I said, okay, sure. And we went out, and then at the end of it, he pulled me aside and just said, hey, I'm going to finally release this record I've been working on for a million years, and I want to put a different band together just to have a different flavor and go do some dates. And he just ended up liking having his own thing and having his wife out singing with him. Savannah and him are kind of inseparable, so it was great. And we just went out and it just kept going, and he decided that he wanted to just stay with that as opposed to pull Cinderella back together. But and then so I did that for like probably 4 years or 5 years, and then I was going out and doing an occasional Winger shows, but at the time, Winger hadn't done much, and there wasn't big offers yet. It was just kind of, but they started going out more and more, and pretty soon they were getting better offers and bigger venues. And Kip finally just called and said, "Hey, would love to have you jump back in full time." So
that's awesome.
I just told him, and that's my family. So I told Tom, I said, "Hey, look, Winger wants me back in. Let's just start looking for somebody to replace me." And I said, I will stay in and keep doing this until we have a new guy and he's worked in and I can just slide out. And miraculously, Corey, who they currently have in the band, came up to me at a show and just said, "Hey, you don't know me. I'm a friend of John Roth's, and I play keys and I play guitar and I sing just like you. And man, if you ever hear of anything, let me know." And I was like, "Oh my God!" So I got on the phone and called John. I'm like, "Hey, is Corey good?" And he's like, "Oh, he's amazing, and he's the nicest guy." And so I worked with Corey the next day, and I called Tom and I said, "Have my replacement," and he's been with him to this day, and he's a
cool.
fantastic guy. He also is great running. He owns a sound company, so he knows so he helps them with their monitor checks, and I just lucked out, because sometimes it's hard to find a guy that can sing and play keys and play guitar, and
That's a lot to do.
yeah. But Corey's done a fantastic job, and as it turns out, us and them went out together this last year,
nice.
so we all got to be on the road for a month together. It was neat.
No, that's such a cool story. Like in the process, it seems like everything is very seamless. Like in your world, even though you have like a lot of things going on, like it seems like either you're really good at juggling them or you're very lucky. What do you think it is?
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky.
Maybe both though.
It's sometimes it just freaks me out. Like, I mean,
how something
it is
kinda
luck and
works.
timing. I mean, and look, I mean, you have to be talented as well. But I mean, I have a lot of very, very talented friends that just never got to do anything. It just, it's the luck of the draw. It's the right place at the right time, and
Yep.
And of course, the more things you've done, it kind of elevates you in terms of, okay, well, he's done all that stuff. He must be good, and
Sure.
But I don't know. Yeah, but I've definitely been lucky.
So how did you end up writing for TV?
Well, that was Mark Ferrari. I ran into him, unfortunately, at a friend of ours' funeral. We hadn't seen each other in a long time, and afterwards we were in front talking, and the TV thing was something that I was always interested in, and that was in the late 90s, and like I say, I was just kind of floundering, trying to learn how to use my new recording stuff and figuring out, and at that point I literally thought, I'm done. I mean, I was kind of bummed out. I mean, for 3 years there was nothing.
Tired.
I couldn't get anybody to call me back. We were done, and so I just thought, man, maybe I can write for TV. And so, and then I'm talking to Mark, and he's like, "Hey, I just placed like 25 songs in TV last year." And I'm like, "What?" So we started talking, and
Wow.
we started writing. Matter of fact, and I just listened to it today. I listened to the very first song that we did for TV. It's called "Have a Drink on Me." So cheers.
Cheers.
And Mark, we got actually Mark Torian from the Bullet Boys sang it.
Oh, cool.
It sounds like a Leonard Skinner song. It's just a southern rock song, and it started placing immediately. Mark had it in like 3 different things, and I was like, wow. And so we started working together, and then he hired on a couple other guys, Scott and Jamie, and the 4 of us just were working together. And then Mark was just getting more and more and more stuff, and he's like, "Hey, I got to bail from the writing. I need to start handling all this paperwork and all the publishing and all that." So he
All the not fun stuff.
left, and then he decided to make it a company called Master Source. And the 3 of us were writing a ton of stuff for it, and then he would hire specialty guys for like the Christmas stuff or the Latin stuff, or and over the years, like I say, I've written like 350 songs for him, and then he started outsourcing me to other companies too. So it's been a great thing, and
that's super cool.
I don't do much of it anymore, but I don't know. It's just a fun thing on the side, and still get a lot of good mailbox money from it. And then I also was fortunate enough to have in 2000 my buddy he's a big TV composer. He does all the shows like Grey's Anatomy and a lot of big shows. He was at the time swamped with 5 shows, and he called me and said, "Hey," he was doing the music for Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and he said, "They need a new main title, and I don't have the time to do it. So if you want to try for it, if you get it, I'll split it with you." And his name's Danny Lux. He's an amazing composer, and so I was like, "Sure," So
Is that so? I mean, that's kind of like my generation. Like I like TGI Friday. I was kind of a nerd. I watched that a lot when I was a teenager. So Is that so? She had like 4 years in high school and 4 years in college. Is that
It
what
was
you're
the
saying?
college
It was the
ones.
college ones. Okay.
So he had
okay.
had the previous one, and then they decided she's going off to college, and they were bringing in the new characters.
Do something a little bit
Saline
different.
Moon Fry or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
And so Sabrina, Melissa Joan Hart's mom, Paula, was the executive producer of the show. And so she just said, hey, I want something that sounds like The Sopranos. And I was like, what?
But in a Sabrina kind of format.
Yeah. So I was like, really? And so I did one, sounded real synthy and all, and she loved it. But meanwhile, Viacom and Warner Brothers called up and said, hey, wrong direction. We're cutting pictures like a Chemical Brothers kind of psychedelic 60s. Can you do something like that? And I'm like, sure. So I started working on that. Had this reverse Beatlesy stuff. And then Paula called me back. I was like, no. And so I called my buddy. I said, hey, they're doing exactly what you said. Everybody's telling me something different. So he called a meeting with them. And they finally pulled together 4 main titles that they liked that were all basically pop songs. And then she called me on the side and just said, hey, rock it out a little bit, but make it kind of like those. And one of them was Seventh Heaven, which a lot of people don't know was written by Steve Plunkett, Autograph singer.
Okay.
And it was that song, Seventh Heaven,
Yep.
And it was funny because at the time he just lived down the street from me. So, but
he's like, you're working on that? I'm working on this.
It's funny. So I finally did what she said. I wrote a little rock song, and she called up and said, I love this. Let me get it solidified when the rest of people show up in a half an hour. And they called back and said, bullseye, this is it, but just make it 5 seconds longer. We don't care how you do it. So that's why I put the little fairy dust noise at the beginning.
Yeah. Then
I expanded the drum fill in the middle and then fairy dust noise out. And she's like, done deal.
That is so funny. I know exactly what you're talking about. They made a good chunk of, because her mom and they made a good chunk off of they were really in charge of that whole production thing.
Yeah.
So
the funny thing is too, she had to dance to it at the beginning, and so it was about a half a year later. I was at a coffee shop on Sunset, this really cool little stone coffee shop that's kind of sunk into the hill, and in comes Melissa Joan Hart, and I was like, oh my God, I want to go up and say hi and let her know I wrote her thing. And then I sat there. Well, she immediately got into a meeting with these 2 guys, and so while I was sitting there, I'm like,
how do you
actually, what if she hates it? Because it wasn't her choice to say yes, and she had to dance to it.
Right.
And I was thinking I'd go up and say, I wrote your, and she's like, oh, that
thanks.
crappy thing.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Exactly. And now she lives here in town, so I'm assuming at some point I'll run into her sometime. And now I could say it, and she could go. She could tell me now she hates it, and it won't hurt my feelings.
When did you move to Nashville? Because it seems like you were in LA a lot for a long period of time.
I was there forever. And unlike most people, I actually do miss it. I really loved being able to go to Big Bear or San Diego or Santa Barbara. I had really cool mountain biking places, although I have an amazing mountain biking place here too. But I don't know. I'm a California boy, growing up in the wine country in Sonoma County. But
it's not bad. It's not a bad place to grow up.
Yeah, I love the ocean. I like amazing weather, which of course down in LA. Well, although this last year I think they had more rain than we did, but
our most recent guest, Tony Harnell, he was
love
just
Tony.
Hey
Tony.
Yep. Hey Tony. He was just talking about.
He goes to the Suki, my Japanese restaurant as well.
Does?
Yeah.
Oh, that
I've seen him there twice.
We're gonna check it out. Because
gotta go.
Like I said, I was like, I need more places to go, and but so he was saying that he misses California a lot.
Yeah,
like
and
to
of course,
this day, he still does.
Sometimes there's screwy things about California, we all know, but there's absolutely beautiful places there. I mean, Yosemite, I used to go to a lot as a kid, and it's such a diverse state. From San Diego, if you go up, and then you get past Mendocino, it just gets prettier and prettier as you go north, and of course up into Oregon and Seattle and Vancouver. It's just beautiful.
Beautiful up there.
And some of the coastlines, of course, in Northern California, it's more cliffy and can be inland 30 minutes, which is where I lived in Sonoma County, and then I would drive out to the ocean on a day where it was 104 degrees at my house, and I'd get out there and it was really windy and the fog was rolling in and it was cold, so you never knew what you were going to get. But
were you doing both then? Were you there and then here at the same time, or when did you make the move?
So what happened was when Winger had not been a band for quite a while. It was 2002.
Okay.
We got a call from Poison saying, hey, we know you guys aren't together anymore, but if you want to put the original Winger back together, we are going out on the road with Cinderella, and we'd like you to come out. Once again, Cinderella, we were always together. And there's a funny ending story to that, which I'll just say it now. When I first moved here, I bought a house, and literally, like, it was in the winter, and it was about the first week I was out there, and it had been snowing. I was scraping snow off my windshield, and all of a sudden this car pulls up, and I hear this guy go, what the and I look in the window, and it's Jeff LaBar. And I go, and I'm way out of town, out in Bellevue, like off McCrory Lane, which is another couple miles past Bellevue in this neighborhood. And I'm like, what in the world are you doing here? He goes, I live right there. I had literally moved across the street from Jeff LaBar, like, 25 minutes out of
That's so
town.
bizarre.
Wait, did you say it was Bellevue or
Hermitage?
Because
Because
I know Jeff lived in Hermitage, right? Like with the Seligmans.
Later on. This is when I
okay.
first moved there in 2003. And he was living at his girlfriend at the time's house. And
Yep.
so,
Wow.
Jeff is one of the first people that Dan introduced me to when I moved here.
oh, wow.
He was so sweet and so
good guy. I mean,
just
R.I.P.
just
Jeff.
a good guy. It was really sad. R.I.P. to Jeff. But he was just super sweet and like super like very non-intimidating to talk to. You know what I mean? Like
I got to see him about a month before he passed away. I went to a barbecue, and Eric was there as well. So me and Eric and Jeff stood around the bar, and he was flipping the burgers, and we all talked, and I'm very grateful for that little time. Little did I know, that would be the last time I saw him. So
yeah,
wow,
that's crazy. But
Kip actually, at one show, ran up and snatched off of Jeff, one of those chains, the connect your belt and all that. Kip still wears it on stage, and I guess Jeff's wife had given it to him, and Kip took it, and
didn't
she's
return
like,
it.
That's yours. You got to get it back from him. He goes, you know what? I'm going to let him keep it because the story's so cool. And the cool thing is, Kip still wears it to this day.
Really?
Oh, that's cool. It's like a little tribute, man. It's awesome.
So is that like the Kip that's like the funny clown Kip? Like
Yes.
not.
You don't see him. You don't see that one often, but he's usually very serious.
I'm just gonna run up and do that.
He's, writing a symphony in his head. So.
That's crazy.
Before I just want to say, I would give a
Please.
shout out to Debonique, Jeff's wife, whatever. I think we were talking about Debbie, right?
Yeah, Debbie.
Okay, yes. Just want to say I haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah,
So,
hey Debbie.
anyway.
Hi,
Hey, everybody.
We love her too. Yeah.
Yeah, she's so cool. So now that you're in Nashville and you're continuing to, you see the guys in Cinderella, like, and obviously they live here. I don't know if the guys in Poison live here.
Well, I think Brett lived here for a while. I don't think he does anymore.
But, okay, so like with that, so you're doing that and you're, playing with Cinderella, and then you're still like, playing with Kip, and you're still writing too. So, which just kind of begs the question, moving on to the next thing, like, and this kind of takes it back to more your artistic side. And I meant to ask you this earlier, so my apologies, but what do you have any songs that like you write for other people that after a while you're just so attached to, and you're like, man, I kind of wish that I had like held on to that, like, you know what I mean?
No.
Or not put out for this person, or not put out for like TV or something like that, but used for something else. No,
never. I've been pretty lucky that, the people that did this, I was very happy with Kip's performance of Miles Away. It
was a great song.
I co-wrote with Rach and Snake, the Gang's All Here, the single and title track of their last record. I was shocked and happy to hear that not only was it, the title track, but it was the first single. And then I found out that Eric Grunwald had sang it, and I'm a huge Eric fan. He's got a fantastic voice. So that was amazing. And, if a song ever gets lucky enough to get out and do anything, go do it. I don't care who's singing it. Granted, I would be sad if, and with all the projects I've done, and some of the records, even on the Steve record, there's things I wish were mixed differently. And you talk to any musician, and they will always complain about the mixes. It's so rare that it gets done completely the way you want it, but nobody else ever heard the demos, and because we get demo-itis, we have this little version that we hear, and then it gets re-recorded and it doesn't sound the same, and
isn't it true, Paul? Isn't it everything's always a work in progress? Anyways, when you release something, it's like, oh, there's still stuff that's left to be done on there, but it's just you kind of got to let stuff go.
If you ask any musician, they would always go back and change something, I think, but that's just the nature of the beast, and I've just learned to let go and move on,
I think that's an important thing, because I don't know if a lot of people. I don't know if a lot of people have an easy time with that. You know what I mean?
It's an obstacle, definitely.
Well,
yeah.
For some people, it's it does them in because they never released anything.
Exactly.
And it can, I have this one song I did just for fun. It's kind of a Journey sound-alike song, and got this great singer in town, Ryan Christopher. He's actually moved now. He was in that Journey tribute band, and he sounds a lot like Steve, and so I had him sing it and got what I thought was a good mix, and then I heard it a week later. I'm like, oh, that's not a good mix. Now it's a year later, and I've remixed it 100 times, and I'm like a deer in the headlights with it now. I've done it so many times, so I'll probably at some point just hand it over to somebody and go, just mix it, would you? Because
please do something with this.
And it's just, it's not
anymore.
anything I'm trying to pitch or anything. It's just a song for fun, and it's a really cool song.
We have to touch upon like one of the biggest things that you've done in a little bit, that has been in the process since like the past few years, like the Mick Mars album.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Paul.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How do you feel about that? So you co-wrote like a good majority of that album.
9 of the 10 songs.
Dang.
The 10th one was just an instrumental that Mick had from a long time ago.
Well, a lot of people have been waiting for that album,
Yeah. So,
and how did you get brought into the mix?
Michael Wagner brought me in.
Okay.
Initially just to write lyrics, and then over meeting with Michael and Mick and then them playing me some of the songs, I realized that, yes, I definitely was interested in doing it. My first meeting with Mick, which was at his house for 6 hours, I totally liked him. We just hit it off. We talked for like 6 hours, and I just said, yeah, but I realized that, the way they were structured at the time, the way they'd recorded them, it was going to be very hard to fit lyrics over where it sounded like a cohesive song. So I just told Mick, I'm like, hey, are you open to me, changing things around a bit so I can fit a lyric? And he's like, yeah, do what you want to do. I said, all right, give me these 2 ideas. I'll do what I would do, bring it back and see what you think. And it was just one of those things. And the other thing was I told him that I am not an amazing lead singer. So if I sang to him the lyrics that I had written, he would probably not like it. So I asked him if it was okay if I put a singer on. And he didn't have a singer at the time. He was kind of playing me some guys he heard online. And I said, hey, I have an idea. Let me put somebody on I think you might like, which was Jacob Bunton. And we just lucked out. The first song, which is a song on the record called Alone, it's pretty much how I redid it. I mean, we didn't change that one a lot. But then as we got going, me and Jacob and Mick would restructure the ideas together, and then me and Jacob would take them and try and write lyrics and stuff, and we'd bring it back to Mick, and he'd go, oh, wow, I like this, and I don't like that. And we would, it was just a very collaborative effort and a lot of fun. And but it dragged on a little, probably too long,
Well, I'm sure the pandemic didn't help.
It didn't help. And then not only that, then Michael had a couple strokes and went through a period of that. So there was a lot of delays on the project, but we just kept at it, and it was a labor of love, and finally it got released now.
And it's doing really well.
Doing pretty well, yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to check what anything does anymore.
The last that I heard, man, I think it was #1.
Well,
right,
it
for the
did
rock
enter
records, right?
first day at #1. It probably didn't stay there, but it entered the first day at #1 on the chart.
What do you think are the most notable differences since you were first signed to a band? Like nowadays, it's like the Wild West out there.
Yeah, I have not kept up with it.
There's almost no
as
point.
Kip always says, it's a better man that knows his limitations. I stick to what I know how to do, which I write and I play, and I've tried to keep up with all the stuff with publishing and all the stuff with the labels and how streaming and who's, how they track. It's just
Everything.
gotten to the point where I'm like, I hope it all works out in the end. But
Well, it's one of those things where I feel like I always want to see musicians get paid more. And like growing up in a Napster generation where it's like you could just rip things online, but you lose a certain quality and then it just changes everything. And then other things start coming into play. And now we don't do vinyl anymore. We do CD. Now we don't do CD anymore. We do digital. Now we don't pay for music anymore. We do this. And
I know.
It's
All I can say is I hope the guy that started Napster doesn't sleep at night. He did not do any music people any favors.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I don't.
Thanks a lot, dude.
I haven't
Yeah.
looked into this, but I don't know if he even thought about the potential of anything about
No,
this.
he probably
people
didn't.
don't.
He probably didn't realize how badly he was going to hurt the music
To
business.
screw
but
everything.
He's crumbled it. Yeah.
Well, and just like the actors of being on strike and with the writers and stuff like that, like just to me, like people need to get paid for their art. Like that's just the bottom line. And like you need to find a way to support people, whether it's buying tickets to their tour or buying their merch. Nowadays, I feel like a lot of people make money off of merch. I mean, I know they always have, but it's like that's one of the main.
it is. You're right.
It is, and like
because you're not going to be selling any records,
No.
and you're not going to make anything off of streaming.
No, it's like
So,
0.0001%.
yeah, you better be touring, and you better be selling merch, and you
Yep.
better be doing VIP meet and greets, and
Do you think there's going to be like a tour happening with this?
There won't be a tour. Mick
Okay.
has made it real clear that he doesn't want a tour, that, he might possibly do a show here or a show
Mm-hmm.
there or a quick residency somewhere where he doesn't have to travel,
Mm-hmm.
with ankylosing spondylitis. He's in pain a lot, and but he's
fair.
a massive trooper. Never complains, and
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so it's up to him. I mean, that would be awesome. I'd love to do a show here or there.
Do a show here would be great.
And but yeah, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. What's next for you, do you think? You're done with one major thing.
Yeah, well,
Do you have something else on the horizon?
I don't right now. I'm like, it's weird. This is kind of like the first time where I'm like, going, wow, I wonder, because Winger, we've kind of made, like last year we toured our buns off, and this year we have a fair amount of shows. We're doing some European stuff, and we're doing, all of a sudden we have some shows. We intentionally tried to keep this year sparse because Rod's going back out with the Dixie Dregs, and Johnny,
Sure.
our other guitar player, plays with Mickey Thomas, and Mickey's got a ton of shows.
Mm-hmm.
Kip is trying to finish up a string quartet thing for the lead violinist of the Nashville Symphony.
That sounds intense.
And, Mick wants to start working on songs again for another record at some point here. So I don't know. I'm like, I think for me, in the next couple of years, I want to get back just sitting in my studio because last year we were just on the road. I haven't actually sit and wrote or recorded anything much in the last couple of years. So I'll just do some more of that and probably more relaxing. Just riding my Harley or my mountain bike and just doing things.
Going around Mount Radnor.
Yeah, exactly. Lake Radnor. Yeah.
Lake Radnor.
Yeah.
Take some time. Yeah, I've never been there, so I don't even know.
Oh, it's
what it
beautiful.
is.
It's beautiful out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and share your story and your perspective on everything.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome and great setting, and you guys are great. This has been
Yeah, we
wonderful.
appreciate you, man. Thank you so much, man, for doing this, man.
Yeah,
And
no, this has been awesome, and I'm glad you like the cocktail.
Oh, it was fantastic. Maybe one more.
I can do that.
Yeah,
I got
we'll do
extra. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we're going to link all your socials and everything around,
Okay.
but so is there anything else that you want us to know about?
Yeah, I don't have anything to plug. Just
Cool. Just do your
keep
thing.
your ears and eyes open. Who knows
love
what I'm
it.
going to do next?
Check out
Always
your
doing
Facebook.
something cool, man. Well,
Check
yeah.
out your Instagram. We're going to make it happen. Well, thank you so much for coming out,
Thanks,
and
guys.
we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Cheers.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Hey, you've just watched or listened to another episode of Nashville on the Rocks. If you like what we do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to follow us on all of our socials and on your favorite podcast streaming apps. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.